The afternoon.
We missing Cassie tonight?
Cassie will be absent tonight, correct. All right, I will open up this town council meeting for September 1st. Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All you, Twyla.
Okay, start with roll call. Counselor Albert.
Here.
Counselor Kobe's absent. Did you want to take a vote now?
Please, I need a motion. I need a second on that. She's actually got a work commitment.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Pass 6-0. And next is Counselor Ganong.
Here.
Counselor La Rochelle.
Here.
Counselor Ward.
Here.
Counselor Lunt.
Here.
And Counselor Fellows.
Here. Moving right along, Twyla.
Is good news and recognition.
We have one from the side. Mark, come on in.
Greetings. Thanks for having us. I want to take this moment to thank Sherry Garnett for her 11 years of service for the town of Lisbon. I'm going to read a couple paragraphs, just small comments about things that she's been very involved with the last 11 years. But before I do, there's a lot of things that can't be quantified or measured and things like that she's been a big part of, especially for me as administrative assistant. I was telling Alan, and I've said this before about things to run things by, people to run things by before you hit send, an email, a text message. Sherry's the perfect person to run things by before you hit send, because she's always my equalizer. She always put me in the right frame of mind to send the right message. And that's one.
It's called the voice of reason, Mark.
Can't measure that, man. I'm always thanked her for that. And the shenanigans, if you ever seen the sitcom, Parks and Recreation, it really is kind of like that. No day is the same. There's always things that kind of hit you curveballs, and Sherry's always been able to hit those. So I really appreciate it. I'm really going to miss her. We all are. So let me read this. For all of us, it was a pleasure for us at the Lisbon Parks and Recreation to have had the opportunity to work with Sherry, alongside Sherry, the last 11 years. She was hired in early August of 2009, and as the manager in the Parks and Recreation Department's office. Since that day, she had become the approachable, friendly face known to all, and the hub of all communication. Her vision has led to many new programs and events in the community. Sherry started and coordinated the Movies in the Park several years ago. She was also the person behind Lisbon's Winterfest at Beaver Park, transforming a once little-known park to a very popular Lisbon year-round destination. Both events attract hundreds of people every year. She's also helped me plan larger events like the car show and the 5K, and in the day-to-day operations of our office. That's the biggest change we've seen. But she has improved everything she's touched with our department. Sherry has created methods to our systems, streamlined countless tasks and processes, including implementing an online registration process and payment software program. When she first started, we were collecting $80,000 in revenues, and now we're collecting over $300,000 in revenues. Things like that in 11 years that's quantifiable, and that's impressive. She's been a big part of that success. But her character and her passion for the community service is just simply amazing and the best. She's always looked out for others, especially advocating for those less fortunate. She sincerely feels successful when she helps others succeed. And I just want to thank you for 11 wonderful years. I'm really going to miss you, and so is everybody else.
One of the last few things we can do together. So.
Yeah.
It's been my very great pleasure.
And again, I just want to say thank you too, because even cooking hot dogs, I'm not sure who we're going to get to cook all those hundreds of hot dogs.
Thank you for leaving it better than you found it, and Kate's really going to have some big shoes to fill.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She will do fine. She's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
I'm her husband.
Hey, we can all relate to that, buddy. We can all relate to what you're saying.
Listen, when we first moved here, she was always known as, oh, you're Greg Garnett's wife. Now that she's retiring, now I'm Sherry's husband. Now a Lisbonite.
Right.
That's good stuff.
Thank
You're just
Thank you.
Get in the truck, guy.
Yeah.
Anybody got anything else for good news recognition, please?
Who wants to follow that? Come on.
Nobody wants to
Yeah.
follow that. All right. Moving right along, Twyla.
So next is the public hearings. Once the chair opens the public hearing, those present who wish to speak may enter the room and approach the lectern, one individual at a time, to address the council chair. Please use the microphone and state your name for the record. Those listening from Town Hall live stream are now invited to send written comments by emailing award@lisbonme.org at this time. Councilor Ward will review his emails. The first public hearing is the 2020 CDBG facade grant.
I'll open up the public hearing. Is there anybody waiting in the wings there, Brett?
Mike Wilding from Railroad Diner.
Come on in.
Is that for the public, for the referendum?
Want to speak on behalf of the CDBG grant? Go right ahead, mister. Just tell us who you are and address, please.
Okay, my name is Michael Wilding. Me and Sandra have been running the railroad for almost 13 years now, and we just purchased it. And we've done a lot of work over the years when we first went in, and the last few years we haven't done too much. We're trying to keep up with things. We wanted to hold off until we purchased it, and we're in hopes now of, it needs some renovation on the outside especially, and a little sprucing up here and there, and that's what we're hoping to accomplish. We're going to do it as we can, and if there is something coming along, any grant money that would possibly be available, it would help us big time.
By all means, the facade grant is actually, is it this one a 50-50 as well, Brett?
50-50, 1-to-1, yep.
If 50-50 associated with that, it's actually directly intended for what you're talking about. So I encourage you to actually work with Brett through the process as things materialize.
Okay, we would like to, I understand it's a 196 thing, what's visible from 196.
Which you completely are.
Yeah, we would like to spruce up the front quite a bit. The dormers up top, there's one on the end facing the intersection.
Yep.
And there's also one on the front that faces Rusty's, and both of them need redoing, and the roof is a little shaky. It's not leaking, but it's old and tired. And we'd just like to spruce it up, put some new windows and new siding on the dormers, and get it looking good again, you know.
Perfect. Thank you. Anything else? Thank you.
I'd like to say congratulations on the purchase.
Thank you very much.
Now, definitely, that purchase is going to be, having that done, I think, is going to make a big difference, because I know you folks have put a lot of time and effort into it.
Anybody else out there, Brett?
That's it.
I have the one that you handed me earlier then from Lisa Ward. I understand the council will be asked to accept CDBG funding at tonight's meeting. I'm sorry I'm not able to attend. The facade grant program is a valuable tool for Lisbon's development committee, and I continue to support the economic development of our town, benefit individual businesses, and also benefit the community at large. A healthy business community leads to a healthy overall community, and the CDBG facade grant program helps make that happen. Speaking as chair of the LDC, I support the continuation of the facade program because I know it adds so much value to the community as a whole. I hope you will convey my support to the council tonight. I think she said it best. Anybody else want to speak on behalf of this item? I will close the public hearing and we'll move on.
Next item is the public hearing for the referendum question 1, bond ordinance for an additional $140,000 for the MDOT Main Street project.
Anybody wishing to speak on behalf of this item tonight? for the listening dot, for anybody that didn't gather from last meeting, I'll cover the fact that the original estimate for this project actually fell short by the amount that's here to be able to complete the project for the Main Street 126 project at the current estimate and this town's percent, which is 10 or the 20, I forget.
10.
Our 10%. The funding that's here, we already have. There will not result in additional funding actually coming from taxation. It's just to be able to pass a straight face test for the town's portion exceeding the $250,000 amount set by charter. Yes, sir.
Just in short, basically, when you go vote, if you want the Main Street to be reconstructed, this is a yes vote.
Correct. No is not an acceptable answer here. Anybody else? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Moving right along, Twyla.
Next item is audience participation and response for agenda items. At this time, those in the audience who wish to speak may enter the room and approach the lectern, one individual at a time, and address the items or issues that are on the agenda. Those listening from Town Hall live video streaming are now invited to send written comments by emailing award@lasvonme.org.
Was there anybody out there wishing to speak, Diane?
No.
And I've received no emails. If I receive anything else throughout the course of the meeting, I'll read it into, as we've been doing through the closures and virtual meetings. Moving right along, Twyla.
The consent agenda items are next, and they are considered to be routine and will be considered for adoption by one motion with no separate discussion unless a counselor requests an item to be removed for immediate discussion. Any counselor wishing to remove an item may do so now. Seeing none, Order 2020-155 to approve the municipal accounts payable warrants for $1,878,106.38. The municipal payroll warrants for $143,584.22. The school accounts payable warrants for $151,194.23. The school payroll warrants for $613,681.84. And the minutes of August 11th and the road name request, Aspen Drive, located at the Whispering Pines LLC Mobile Home Park.
I make the motion.
I need a second. I got the second. All in favor?
Passed 6-0.
Next item, Twyla.
Council orders, resolutions, and ordinances. Order 2020-156, the Lisbon Village Sidewalk Corrective.
Can we take one out of order? Can we take 159 out of order so Brett can leave?
Sure.
Okay. Let's go to Order 2020, seeing no objections. 159, it's the 2020 CDBG Facade Grant Resolution.
Anything new that we haven't already covered, Brett?
No, you've got all the details. It's a $100,000 opportunity for the town. We've got private property owners who are interested in it. It's something that's been done in the past year. We're building on that success, so I think it's pretty clear cut.
Was there, we doing 160 as well for the amendment with the language
Yeah,
on
you
that?
can if you like, yeah.
I think it makes sense while he's
Yep,
standing
yep,
in the room. I'd hate
yep.
to send him and then have a question come up.
Sure.
That said, how many people do you have thinking that are waiting for this program?
We've got 3 teed up right now that are in the works, and then I think we'll get a few more in the spring. So we've got
And that's 40 grand for cap on the individual, or is it 20
20 per
20.
project.
per project?
Yep.
Perfect.
It's 20 per, it's 20 matched with 20, right?
Yes.
Right, yeah.
20,
Yeah.
20 per business as well. So if you had two businesses perhaps in the same building, there's different
Right.
flexibility there.
Right. Questions?
No, I think the program worked great last time, and it actually proved that it really wasn't practical for smaller projects as much just because of the legwork involved, but for that number that you are dialed into actually works good for that size of project. So.
I just remember that we had reservations doing it last year because of the complications and the labor rates and all that sort of stuff, but it worked out a lot better than we thought.
Just learning the system, that's all.
Right.
Learning the program.
I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Well, I have a question.
Yep.
Were you going to make a motion and include both of those items?
No, I just-
Or are you just doing the one motion?
I'm doing
right now?
160 out of order as well.
Okay, so this is the motion for 159?
Correct.
The grant resolution only, okay.
All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
Let's move right to 160 so he can leave.
I make a motion to approve.
That's not a roll call.
I'll second that.
Everybody read the changes? We're basically removing the first floor because it's something that's required at the, not at the state level, that we actually put locally. It probably made sense at that point in time, but in that regard, it makes sense to be consistent and not being restrictive as we're trying to push this out to additional people.
Right.
Was this a roll call? I heard the question. I don't see that noted. All in favor then?
6-0, okay. Order passed.
Drive fast, take chances.
Sure. I'd say drive
Night,
slow,
Brett.
but
What was that?
I'd say drive slow, be easy, but
Drive fast, take chances.
Close one eye.
Hey, that's not funny. Next item, Twyla.
Order 2020-156, the Lisbon Village Sidewalk Corrective Action Plan.
Hi, I'm Ray from LP Poirier Excavation.
I'm Warren Giroux from Associated Design Partners.
And I see Randy standing right there, so go for it.
All the stakeholders.
Recommendation on the table is what, Diane or Randy?
The recommendation from us is to replace the sidewalk because of the stalling. Mr. Poirier's position is to give us an area as a trial basis to show us what could be done to rectify the problem. The problem is basically scalp iron the whole surface to make it all. It will not have a room finish. It'll be rough and aged look. I went by Naples this past weekend and looked at what the sidewalks look like down there. They just look like 20-year-old sidewalks. It's just, basically there's no room finish at all. And you basically see more of the aggregate, not a finished surface. So that's what they proposed, what we propose. If council doesn't like the looks of it, they propose to do an area where, up on the Graziano Square, to do this process from a concrete refinishing company, I believe, and to give us the opportunity to let it weather a season and let council make their own decision on whether or not they like the appearance.
And as I remember from the reading on this time frame, end of year to be able to do it, it makes sense to at least be able to consider the trial, because it's too late in the season to be able to do the work right
That's
now
correct.
for the project anyways.
That's correct. So we brought some pictures to show the council of what the
I could,
gentleman,
and this is from Naples. It's an exposed aggregate surface, which in some municipalities they
I'll just let
pay
you pass it.
more for that. It costs more to provide a surface like that, but it's different. It's definitely a different aesthetic than a room finish.
Okay. Go ahead, you had the floor, man. Anything else you had to offer from the lectern?
the only thing that we can say is that we feel that this is one of the best options for the failed finish. It's unfortunate, but there is areas of that sidewalk that didn't fail, and there's areas that did fail. And we followed the spec to a T, and we don't understand why the sidewalk would have done what it did.
Okay.
So that resurfacing could be done. So if you do a pilot project this fall and look at it in the springtime, and if it's decided to go that way, that work could be done and wrapped up in a matter of a week or two. The resurfacing and sealing it, obviously that's significantly faster or shorter timeline than removing the sidewalks, which would probably take the better part of the summer.
Right.
And this is just my opinion, but that is a pretty aesthetically good-looking sidewalk, and in the location of this particular Lisbon project, those sidewalks match into old beat-up bituminous sidewalks and brick sidewalks, and an exposed aggregate sidewalk would kind of enhance that whole revitalization park area that we have there in a much quicker timeline. this is significantly less invasive. You're not bringing in heavy equipment and, removing parts of the sidewalk, all of the sidewalk and tying up traffic and whatnot.
The application that you guys are actually recommending to try, what's the test for wearability compared to other options? So is there anything on that if we go through this process and put that down? Is there any track record on how long that's going to wear?
How long what's going to wear?
That, if we allow you to actually move forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Well,
Yeah.
this surface, I think, is arguably a little bit stronger than that upper broom finish, because the broom finish is really just the cream on the top.
Right.
It's going to wear off any joint, right?
Right.
This is actually, if you were...
Stronger.
It would ultimately be stronger if you probably tested the material science on it. But from a practical standpoint, I think the test is to, do a pilot area and see how it goes through the winter with, plow removal, which is apparently what's used out here. And I think it's going to wear just as good or better than a regular broom sidewalk, over time. But that's just my opinion. I don't have a scientific,
No, I just didn't know if there was a track record for that kind of application.
Well, they do these all over the place. I mean, and they pay more money for it. It's really a matter of opinion as far as what
you're looking for aesthetically.
But
Right.
This certainly is not less durable than a broom finish, in my opinion.
That's what I needed the listening dot above your head to hear. Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
I had here and then you,
okay.
Don.
Yeah. So pretty much what the process is, from what I understand, is how much concrete was actually poured? Was it 4 inch or 6 inch?
I believe it's 4 inches of concrete.
4 inch. And
Mandy Oliver from Oliver
Yeah.
Associates. It's 4 inches, except the dry 6 inches.
And so with this application, basically, as you mentioned, as it dries, the cream comes to the top, you finish it, and that's actually the softer because there's no aggregate in it.
Correct.
So this process would be the idea of milling off the top. Any idea what the deepest area of imperfection is? Is it an inch, half inch, quarter inch?
No, we've got nothing like that. It's just the failed finish is a 1/16 of an inch.
Is the broom top?
Is the broom top.
So how much, during this process, what would you actually be milling off? Would it be,
Basically, they're taking that failed finish off is all they're doing and just making that exposed aggregate look throughout the entire sidewalk. Instead of having a broom finish here and a broom finish here and having a failed finish, they would bring that aggregate look across the whole sidewalk.
very much like if you're going to Home Depot or Lowe's, you actually see a smooth aggregate type of concrete where they've actually milled it flat.
Correct.
Basically is what. Now, what's it, the sealer on top? I mean, is that something that has any build to
well,
it?
we used a salt guide, which was called for in the spec, which we feel is part of the reason that this didn't take, because the product that they're going to use, and Warren can explain that better to you, is you said salt guide only has 20% of this certain solution.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that salt guard is necessarily a bad choice, but there's other options out there. So a Protectosil is made up of, so the active ingredient in salt guard is like 20%. And this Protectosil has, it's 100%, so it's concentrated with that active ingredient. The guys that I've talked to in Portland that do, or Westbrook that do, concrete restoration, that's ICS, that's what they recommended, considering. They're not saying you've got to use this, and they've used salt guard, and it's not that it doesn't work, but this Protectosil is a more concentrated sealer, and they said if they were doing the job, that they would probably consider doing, putting that sealer down over the salt guard.
So there's really no mill thickness on top. Basically, it's a sealant to protect the pores from actually
That's
residual.
right. You could do a pour over, not a pour over, but a coating, refinish on this. But it's not going to wear well. It's not. It's probably going to look good for a few years, but over time and with plowing and stuff,
That's one of the finishes that I've been working with a company called Butterfield Colors. I've exhausted myself with these people, told them what we had for an issue, because that was the first thought. We were going to skim coat, grind the failed finish, skim coat the entire sidewalks, re-broom finish everything, to give you the look that you guys were looking for. they really wouldn't stand behind their product. So we were kind of like at wit's end with where do we go now? So I believe this is the best fix for what we've got because we have cylinder tests. The concrete didn't fail. It's a finish fail.
I would agree that it is a finish fail. That's not further than salt art is used in a lot of places. I guess what these guys are telling me is that the product has changed, and now it is not just like paint, not as good as it used to be. But I have used it on other projects, including Lisbon Falls, and we haven't had the same results.
Right. So fair to say possibly trial and error, and the fact is it may try out that this product may not stand up over time. The example that I would use is all over East Avenue in Lewiston, there's certain type of brick, and they're all crumbling.
Exactly.
The fact is they were the standard that was out there for any MDOT project at that point in time, but they're still all failing.
Right.
And the quality of the concrete's not changing. Basically, it's what you're doing is getting down to a more secured, cured material. I mean, the top surface is what fails in anything.
That's
I
right.
mean, from a facility, I know new floors, basically when you work over them, it's actually the top, the shine breaks off.
Well, the
because
cream,
it's,
right? Because it's the thinnest part of the concrete. So what happens is you bring that cream to the top and you finish it, and that's what happens.
Sometimes quicker than others, that's all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don, you had a question?
Well, I was going to say, during the season and this summer, I've walked that area just about every day, and I can attest the fact, sure, I can see it's very thin, the layer, but I can also say that in some places it's perfect and some places it's not.
Correct.
I thought it was a matter of how much salt had been thrown on the walk. Maybe
Well,
it is, maybe it isn't.
I believe that salt hasn't a huge issue for this, but how do you you use salt and you use brine on the roads? How do you keep that from getting on the sidewalks?
Yeah.
You can't. Like I said, we followed the spec to a T. They put it out there. They said use this product, finish it this way, salt guard it this way, and that's what we did. And here we are today.
And the real question I have is if you use the refinishing idea and it's successful through the winter and we agree to apply it through the rest of the thing, how long will that take?
To execute it?
Yeah.
So ICS said they would take them, they said without weather, they would be done the whole project in about 7 days. But they said, a couple of weeks.
Not all summer like the last concrete.
No, I mean, if you go in there to replace all these sidewalks, it's going to be all summer again. It's going to be a fall repair job, or fall finish. And you might get your part done and you might not. But
I think that's a little unfair. With effort, this certainly could have been done a lot faster than it was last year, just being honest.
It was hit and miss last year. There's no question about it. There was actually a project, on or off project, without a doubt, yeah.
that might be true, but, I wasn't involved in it. But
Understand, but
there's
just
no
I want to be
argument.
fair and give them all the
Yeah.
correct information to make decisions.
We actually had a lot more area done in another end of town that actually went fairly quickly, just as a comparison as far as what we've seen. I mean, that weren't just trying to compare apples to apples for the amount of sidewalk we did on one side versus the other.
I guess the point I would make is that replacement is going to be significantly more invasive and disruptive.
That's
Personally, I like the finish
7
filter.
days versus redoing everything there, and it's what you're.
And personally, if you look at the pictures, that's very compatible with the area. Broom finish, actually, if you look at it, looks like everything's brand new, and the rest around it doesn't. So,
Right.
anyway.
Yes, Mr. Allen.
Thank you. So, hearing what you've laid out here, I think I'll speak first off and say I can't imagine what it's like to follow everything to the letter of the guidance and only to come out with the result that you got. I'm sure it's not no job that you do or put your name on.
That's
you
correct.
want to have it fail. So I think we all understand that. That being said, for me, I'm a bigger fan of the finish of the ones that haven't had any failure on the top than I am with the proposed tonight. But I'm just one guy, and I'm just going to be honest about where I stand on that. Hearing that, at least check it out, see if we like it or don't like it, and how it stands up, and understanding why you proposed, hey, it might even fit better in with your overall vision or plan. I'm willing to listen, but I do tend to land in the camp of we kind of want to go with what we asked for, and that's where I'll probably end up landing. But I'll also look at the product if we decide to go the other way and say, hey, how did it fare through the winter? Does this make the most sense? I'm not so much worried about the project taking more time whether it's a couple months or weeks or whatever it takes to do, if we have to redo every sidewalk. Not ideal, but I think that we want to get what we paid for as well, too. So, just my thoughts for what they're worth.
One last question, Mr. Chair. It may be minor, but the traffic, the street lights were a big issue last time that they stuck up above the concrete, and that we had to go around with grout and fill in that. What's going to happen this time? Because we're going to change the surface, and that's going to come out as a glaring problem again, I'll bet you.
No, if they go around the lights, it's not going to affect the grout that's underneath it or anything.
Okay.
If they remove it, then, because those are now lagged into the sidewalk,
Yeah.
which is on top of the old foundations that were for the light poles, which were deteriorated. So we basically cut all the studs off. Then when everything was done, we still had the wires poking through. So then we put the light on, put a template, put hammer tights in there, and then put the lights on, which and by the time you put your screw on the bottom, your bolt on the bottom, and then put the base on and level it, because everything's going to pitch. So by the time we leveled all the lights off, now you get a gap. So then you put the grout underneath it. So whatever they propose, they're not going to have to bother with the base or the grout.
No, we're not going to touch the lights. No.
Okay. I just didn't want to get in the point where we got that issue again.
No, it's right now C&P's got, that's just a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
It's in C&P's hands, so.
Okay.
But there is power to all the lights.
Yep, thanks, sir. What type of equipment is it? Something, I'm sure some type of mill grinder, resurfacer product what do you actually use? Is it something that's actually standalone equipment, or is it something on front?
They use, like in Naples, they use a scarifying piece of machinery, which essentially has, mill knives on it. When I talked to Steve Crane, the owner of ICS, he said, they would use something like that, and also, a diamond grinding application to
polish.
Get the good static, because it doesn't show up well in these pictures. In a lot of areas, it doesn't. You don't see it, but in some areas in Naples, because they just did a scarifying, I think, there's some linear feature to it. But they would be able to, mechanically get rid of that essentially, or make sure that didn't manifest from the removal.
And that was my question, because I've seen some of it done where the aggregate is a lot stronger than the cement around it, so you actually do have it's a surface that actually does have quite a bit of texture to it.
Yeah.
But unless you come in with some type of diamond machine that actually has straight cutters.
That would be my plan. I'd like to see that happen.
I mean, we'd be kind of curious to see what it looked like it was done. I mean, I guess we don't have a whole lot to lose by trying to look at it, by myself. I mean, and then
My last question is for all of our associates. Any other information here tonight that we haven't heard related to this project?
No, I mean, I agree that at this point, exactly what Fred just said, is that if you give them a chance to look at it, at this point, you're not going to get it redone this year. So
Right.
that you don't have anything to lose. I mean, my thought was if you were absolutely against it, you may as well just say so right now so they don't waste time. But if you're open-minded to the aesthetic look of it, then I think structurally it would be okay. If it's just a question, and they do have, Castine is one of them, that's what they specify. Their ordinance requires that kind of a look because it fits the aesthetic of their community.
Yeah.
But, so it isn't, it's true what they're saying.
What are some of the other, you said Naples, Randy, forgive me, I didn't mean to talk over you, sorry. Naples is one area that has it. I heard you say Castine. Any other areas close? So if I want to get in my car and drive?
I don't know of any locally. I know other places in New England that have it, but not near us now. So not that I've done an exhaustive search. But.
No, sure. Okay. I just figured if I'm out and about this weekend, I'll make it a point to kind of do a drive-by, but I'll go check. Naples isn't that far.
Yeah, it's on the causeway. It actually looks pretty nice up there.
I guess the one thing I would
Thank you.
the opportunity to ask is if they don't like it and if it doesn't work well over the winter, are you going to tear it out and replace it?
I guess we're going to have to see what the council says, yeah.
But if it doesn't hold up and they don't like the way it looks, or one or the other. But I mean, I hope it works. I'm not rooting against you, but I think we got to have the discussion once here.
Well, that was my question too, is if we
I
don't
agree.
like it, what then?
Well, if it doesn't work or you don't like it or whatever, the next step on this side of the equation is to probably further investigate as to exactly why it failed. Because maybe we don't all know, but a lot of us here know that there was some kind of a failure there. multiple reasons for why that could have happened, and we don't, the time and money hasn't been spent on, to really drill into the science of the failure. It's mostly, from what I can tell, been focused on trying to fix it or repair it or come up with a solution. That's where the energy is.
So basically there's a petrographic analysis test that can be done on the concrete to tell you exactly what happened to the concrete. It'll give you
It'll give you a lot more information, and then you hope you can figure out exactly what happened. I think would probably be.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess the question is this has been quite a time frame in the process going through this. I mean, has that not been done because of the cost of it, or it just hasn't been done because we hadn't got across that bridge as far as that
No,
test?
because we've been trying to come up with a finish that would be acceptable to the town without going through a full repair.
I mean, the
everything.
cost of the test that you're talking about, and I guess, is that test a very expensive test? I mean, I know we've already done boring to check compact and.
It is expensive, and the turnaround time is not fast.
Is that something that you take a sample and you send it to a lab and they actually do analysis on as far as the pour and the mix and aggregate? And
I'm a straight line kind of guy, so forgive me if I'm jumping. What does that have to do with anything? Not that I don't want to know why that the finish of the concrete, why it failed. End of the day, all I look at it as very simple. We paid for a job. If the materials failed, and I'm not saying I don't want to do the other thing, and I'm not to your point, Mandy. I'm all on board with seeing how that plays out. I think it makes perfect sense. We're not going to get the work done this year. Let's look at that. But let's just move to that, have this conversation once kind of scenario. What does that test have to do with anything about whether or not our sidewalk gets done if we don't like the finish of this other one?
That's not what we're saying.
Okay.
It's just giving us a better idea what happened to the sidewalk.
For moving forward.
Correct.
Thank you. I think,
Yes.
not that I didn't think anything, but I'm that guy that has to go to the worst possible case scenario, and that sounded to me like, well, we want to start to look at maybe where some of the other, and that's fine. If you were looking at trying to understand why did this fail, it's always a good idea to know cause, but
Correct.
why did this fail, and then what does that mean for us as getting our work done? That's a different story altogether.
My biggest reason is to find out if we are going to be putting all new sidewalks in. I don't want to be sitting in front of chamber next year or a year after the sidewalk's poured, and then the fail finish happens again, and you say, well, it happened again.
Right.
So if we know what caused this to happen, I guess we have a better idea how we can give you guys the product you're looking for.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted. That fine red dot over your head there. The listening public understands exactly what the plan and the goal is.
I'm going to float the lead balloon, the fact that I'm willing to work with a contractor rather than getting into the nitty-gritty of finger pointing associated with why. If they've got an application associated with that, I think we're foolish to not at least be able to allow them to consider it. The fact is, especially in the time frame for fall, with not being able to do the work. In that regard, it's going to come down to, in the latter, costs and who actually incurs associated with that. I'd rather work with somebody than against. Every time we've tried the other, we lose. We all lose.
I understand that. I have another little question, though, if I can ask, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
If we do this grinding, this test area, it turns out to be acceptable, and you do the rest of the area, what can we expect from a warranty standpoint that it's going to last after that?
Well, I guess we'd fall with a 1-year warranty after the work is complete. So basically, a 1-year warranty is what the project consisted of. I think that's fair.
That's standard. That's standard in the industry, Don.
So it'll be a 1-year warranty after that revision.
Yeah, whether you're doing road projects or it's standard for usually.
It may be standard, but it isn't stated yet, so I want to.
Yeah, no, by all means. And he's got the listening dot above his head. He gets it. Thank you. It's a good question. I need a motion if we're going to consider this.
So move.
I need
but
a
I
second.
don't know exactly what the wording
I'll
is.
second.
So the motion on the table and the second is to actually allow them to go forward with a test. You'll work out where, Randy, that makes sense. And we'll see what spring brings for an update on this to reconsider the rest. Fair?
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for working, thank you, we appreciate you working with us on this.
Any other discussion on the item? This still could die in flames, so we want to wait.
When do you think, I guess the question, when do you think you'll be actually bringing it in to do the surfacing?
Warren can answer that question.
So I'll talk to Industrial Concrete Services tomorrow, this week, and they know that this, you know, that we were having this meeting and that this was a potential, you know, that you may or, you know, may not, but you may allow a pilot to go, and they said that, you know, they could get it done in, you know, he didn't say when, but, you know, the way he was talking, I would think in the next, like, 4 to 6 weeks, you know, maybe sooner. So Steve owns a company, I think one of his right-hand men actually lives in Lisbon or lives very nearby. He was familiar with the park and whatnot, and he's gonna look at it on Thursday. And so you know, sooner than later is what I would like to say, but I don't have any definitive.
One other, just follow up,
Yep.
how big of an area you think they'll actually do for a test, a 20 or 20-foot area? Or, I mean, any idea what?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't have a solid answer for that, but I think it's open for discussion, and I would probably talk to those fellows as well. I mean, it's a little bit of an invasive, you know, process as far as machinery, so they're gonna need a little, you know, room to move. So yeah, a 20 or 30-foot strip, I don't know. And if you guys if you wanted more, or you know, or open to input, I would suspect.
I would assume the biggest part of that job is actually facilitating and actually getting the equipment there more so than the idea of doing it. But.
I would think that the section to be done would be the section that was already affected.
Mandy?
Yeah, we talked about 150 feet at our meeting the other day.
Okay.
And I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, good. I was just.
That gives you a good chunk, not just a little area to look
Yep.
at, and also to be plowed and run over and
Yeah.
looked at.
That was my concern, the idea of having something to actually assess. But
Right down in front of the main event, the old main event, or
Before it gets lost, Mandy, thank you for everything on this too. Appreciate it. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Order passed. Councilor Ganong?
Yep.
oh, he was there.
Okay, 6-0.
Thank you. I'll let you guys work it out. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll be in
appreciate you
touch.
coming in.
Thanks, Randy.
Next item, Twyla.
Order 2020-157 to solicit bids for Crest Avenue sewer line replacement.
Steve out there? Oh,
No,
you're-
he's not
We
here,
got Mandy.
I'm
Mandy's
standing in for
Ah.
Steve.
Look at this.
Double duty,
But,
double
yep,
duty
that
tonight.
worked out well for me. So I didn't hear the introduction, but I'm assuming you want me to give a quick description of what we're doing on Crest Avenue, hopefully?
That'd be awesome.
So right now, Crest Avenue has 7 homes that has 7 small diameter force mains that are polyethylene, and they run along the shoulder of the road and cross to the houses that are on the other side of the street. And each individual house has a pump in its cellar, and it all pumps to the gravity system. Over the last few years, there have been some emergency repairs because the line is burst. And there was another street in town that Steve had a similar situation with, and they were replaced, and that stopped the problem. Obviously, having sewage pump out of the ground is not a good situation, you know, especially with the Department of Environmental Protection looking over every shoulder about sewer overflows. So Steve's trying to get ahead of that and trying to stop that process. Unfortunately, the road was paved recently. We will have to cross it. And we did include in the cost estimate, which I'm sorry I don't have with me because I was already on the road when I knew I was going to pinch hit, that to overlay it in accordance with your ordinance, to do a skinny mix over the section that, and plus 50 feet on either side was part of that. I think that the total cost was like $130,000
yeah.
For the project. That's what's being requested.
So, my question for Steve, I guess Diane or Mandy can field it, and I think I'm partially hearing it. This was not 100% something that we actually planned for, because we would have coordinated the paving, I'm sure, better.
It's not a problem that came up overnight, I guess is what you're
Yeah,
trying to make.
right, but it wasn't in this year's capital plans for Steve originally, is what I'm asking, I guess.
No, I don't think it was.
This is more deemed something that.
Yeah, and I don't even know
emergency
that that's
status.
going to get done this year, is it?
I don't know, but it's
think
pretty
it
late
was
in the year to
By the time we put it out to bid and
Yeah.
everything. And it wouldn't come out of our paving because it's all
Oh,
sewer
it's
work.
coming out of his.
Yeah.
Right.
So the whole thing is going to come out of his capital improvement line. But I don't think anything's
I
gonna-
guess where I'm fishing, and this is more deemed something that needs to happen,
Right.
more emergency rather than capital planning,
Yes.
is my point.
Yes.
Oh, yes, yeah, it's reacting to
Definitely.
the burst.
Yeah.
It's happened more than once.
Because that doesn't impress me to actually be Steve's wheelhouse. He's usually a pretty conscious and planning kind of person. That's the point.
Mr. Chair, may I ask? I mean, do you know how many areas in town that we actually have this type of setup?
I'm sorry, I don't.
Yeah.
I know, in some of the sewer projects we've done, we haven't really done a ton so far, but we've come across private force mains, but they're more individual force mains
Yeah.
rather than a cluster like this. I wish I could remember the other street. Steve told me another street that you just a few years ago corrected a similar situation, but I don't recall. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not a problem. I was just curious. I know Steve did do quite an overview of what we actually had for sewer projects in town that needed to be addressed. And same thing, I can't remember this actually coming up as a flag, but I was just curious if there was other ones that were popping up. That's all.
Just everything that Mandy and Steve actually outlined for anything on the sewer, this was not on the radar in any of that discussion, is the point. So this would be something that we put out to bid now that will ultimately working next spring, because you don't want to be dealing with anything tearing up this winter potentially where it's in the street.
Correct. I'd suggest we put it out to bid in January because that's getting lined up for next season and people are so crazy busy right now, we won't get as good a bid, I don't think, if we do it over the winter.
Your timeline is good on that. That's everything I'm hearing from the contractors too. They would love to have something come before them in January to bid on. I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Need a second?
Second.
Did I cut anybody off in discussion? All in favor then?
Order passed 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy.
You need me for anything
Nope,
else?
we're good. Thank you.
Good night.
Mandy?
All right.
Just, we good with the prior discussion? I know,
Yes.
back and forth associated with that. The fact is, I get there's two perspectives. One is actually a contractor associated with that. One of the things that I will say is if it was done 100% to this, they would not be having the discussion because it would already be on our dime.
Well, thank you, because that was a little frustrating to hear, to be honest with you. I mean, we use the exact same specifications down the road and in many other communities with no problem. I don't know what happened. I don't know whether it was too hot, whether water got added, or whether you just got bad
Temperatures,
mix or bad
could be
conditions or whatever. I don't know what happened. They did pour, one of the comments they made to us during our meeting recently was that they poured them late in the season and they didn't have enough time to really set up before the first snow. Well, it was supposed to be done in July, so
Yeah.
that doesn't impress me much, but anyway.
But again, I'll go back to the other point that I made. I would much rather work with a contractor that's willing to work with us in this here, because the fact is, when it gets down to the finger pointing, it will be about who pays at that point, and nobody wins.
You're right.
Ask that
You're right.
question?
It's not an easy proposition to have somebody completely redo work like that. And if you're willing to let him try this and it comes out, it's true that people do pay a premium to get this kind of finish. It isn't what we specified here, but if it's something that could work for you and it's a good compromise for everybody, it certainly can be a good
And probably we didn't specify it because it would have been a premium.
Right.
It's a second step. It's a second process. It's laying down your base and then actually going back and actually finishing after. I got a question. The test that they were actually implying, are you familiar with the test at all? It's about the concrete testing. And the only reason I ask is the discussion that we were just having, the idea of a bad mix not setting up. If we grind that down a 1/4 inch, we'll still get the same concrete underneath. So, I mean, if we're saying it was a bad mix on top, the idea of taking a 1/4 inch off it doesn't leave a better mix down below. So if it is a concrete, quality product, I would rather know before than after. You know what I mean? Because the idea of waiting a year, every time you wait longer, it just means there's maybe another avenue not to make it happen. But
No, it's true. I don't know much about it. What little I know, because I actually started when this first started happening, I reached out to experts to ask for what's going on here, like back in February or March when I first looked at it. I spoke to SW Coal Engineering, and they mentioned the idea of coring. What these guys would be doing is coring in like you do with after you pave, get the little pucks. They do that, core in and it's a destructive thing. They'd get numerous samples. They do send it out. They told me they were going to send it to Chicago. These guys said there was somebody else closer, but and then they would test it to see whether there was a strength issue or curing issue. I don't know if you can tell anything of whether salt got in it. These guys had also mentioned there was mica in the aggregate, that might not be as strong. I mean, I just tend to think it's more of a finishing issue when you see that kind of spalling, that it's not necessarily a strength issue. There were cylinders that were taken, and they didn't have any problems with their strength testing.
So we did actually bore it, do cylinder testing.
Well,
It
what
just
happened
wasn't
is-
actually done for the idea of, it was done for strength, not so much for,
That's right, and that's what you test for. The way this was done was the contractor actually was required to call SW Cole and have them come and have some samples done and check the slump and the air content, things like that. And air content is one of the things that can lead to trouble because you want enough air in there so you don't have freeze-thaw cycles and the concrete breaking. So those things all came through all right, and there was no reason to think there was a problem based on any of those tests.
I did notice that there are a couple of cracks in the sidewalk, particularly on the other side of the road.
There are.
Yeah.
And they had a problem at the beginning with curling, which is like differential curing on the bottom versus the top. I mean, there was some hot conditions. They were concerned that that below it, the sand that was underneath it was too dry, and it was like a dead sand where you can have a lot of water coming through it. I mean, there's different kinds of sands out there they could have used in the specification too. I mean, these specs have been used over and over again. They're DOT Class A concrete, which is a pain to work with. Everybody says it sets up really quickly and it's hard to work with, but it's very durable, and that's why we use it for sidewalks, because it's good enough for the state, it's good enough for all the towns.
It was grant money.
It was.
It's a requirement to have that standard in there too, pretty much.
Well, because this was CDBG, it might not have been required, but it's prudent because that's
Right.
what the standard in this state is for durable concrete.
I actually had a similar problem with a poured floor that was polished, and it wasn't broom finished, but same deal. You're just dealing with cream on top getting polished, and it had no salt on it. It was basically just the way it was finished, and too much water content and
Cracked off.
too much shine. Yeah, I mean, basically you annealed the cement to the point where you just had a very soft surface on top, and over a period of time it just broke up, you know.
Yeah,
And
it's not good.
unfortunately, it had no salt, nothing to do with salt. It was strictly the idea of just how it was finished. But
Right, right. So,
Anything else that we didn't cover, Randy? From your perspective? Randy, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I think we've covered just about everything.
And I meant it when I said that, Randy. And the fact is, I know you're the watchdog actually operating on the town's behalf associated with that. So everything to this point in the discussion, I appreciate everything that you guys have done for us. So thank you.
thank you.
I mean, I will add one thing. When we saw that there was a problem with curling and stuff, they did come in and take all the sand out and put gravel back in, a different type of gravel that hold moisture a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So I think we still had some of the same problems going on because, boring in 90+ degree weather. I mean,
Yeah.
working with that mix, it was a
Right.
challenge for them, but
It was. The thing is that they did so many different pours. You know how long it took and how many different pours
Yeah.
there were. It would be unlikely that they would all have the same problem. But
yeah, some were done
they
summer,
do.
winter.
And I think Ray's also sincere that he wants to stand behind this, but it's just such a daunting task to take it all out and replace it. If we can come to some kind of other compromise that benefits everybody, then all the better. But if not, like you said, town paid for the room finish, so
Right.
hopefully we're not going in a difficult place.
Yeah, we actually struggled hard trying to determine between cement and hot top on that. So,
Yeah.
I know, it was a very tight budget, which is why some of the adjacent areas they're referencing didn't get done. You could only do so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy.
All right, thank you. Goodbye.
Next item, Twyla?
Order 2020-158, question 1, the bond order for an additional $140,000 for the MDOT Main Street project. This is the second reading. A roll call vote is required.
I'll make the motion.
Need a second.
Second.
Anything else we haven't already beaten on this topic? Go for it, Twyla.
Okay, Counselor Albert,
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle,
yes.
Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Counselor Lunt,
Yes.
Counselor Ganong,
Yes.
Counselor Fellows,
Yes.
6 yeas, 0 nays, order
Can I
passed.
ask one question on that,
Yep.
sir? What are we going to do for some type of education prior to the voting? Are we going to do a mail out or anything on our?
I'll do what we did last time. We probably won't do a mail out, but I'll have something to go on social media and on our website. It's just the contents of, I mean, it shouldn't be that hard because everybody that supported it before, it's just, we've got money involved in it now for the engineering and right away, which we would have to pay our share of it. But it's just, the cost of
Escalation.
escalation costs, that's,
I just don't think once we get out of this room that a lot of people understand that, that's all. So
The key soundbite, again, for the listening public, then would be a part of this is the fact is no additional taxes. We already have the funding. We just need the permission to be able to expend.
And worst case scenario, if this actually fails November, we still have an opportunity
We
to go
still
out
have
in
another
spring?
opportunity, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
just want to make sure there's a second option.
And
Alan?
and we may never have to spend that because it depends on what the bids come in at the time. The one good thing is we did get the street lights included in the package. So instead of the town spending 100% for all new street lights, we're only going to have to pay 10%.
10% of the entire project.
Right. So it's a win-win for us to get this passed because we're going to get all new street lights, and then we can use all the old ones as spares for up this way.
When you frame this, I recommend you actually frame it with what the original estimate was, what the new estimate is, and that the street lights are a part of that. So
Yes,
that
I
they
will.
actually,
Yeah.
You can give them as much back information to be able to justify why it's
So
coming.
the intent content summary, I will adjust that from the last
Yes.
time.
Do you have something else? I'm sorry.
No, I was thinking to get the word out, maybe have you and Uncle Sam outfit like one of those party stores with a big,
Yeah.
right by the polling place. That might be a good way to do it.
Right on.
Just on another note on that, we are working with Unitel to see if there's any more movement on the between the residents and the commercial businesses downtown to see if they want to, hook into the
Gas.
They wanna
natural
come back to the
gas.
table?
I know back then they didn't have enough people that wanted to do it, but a lot's changed since the last time, so there might be more interest, and that's the only way that it's going to get done is if they have the interest that will pay off for the investment.
That's fine. I mean, the fact that
Yeah.
where I would land on that one is we can't have them make the business decision, but the road is only going to be open. The fact
Right.
is I would enforce as best we can a moratorium after the fact. Don't come to us a year after
Right.
the fact to say that now you've got somebody that wants
Right.
to.
Well, the state will enforce it. It'll be a 5-year moratorium because
Right.
it's a total reconstruction, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Next item, 12.
Other business, council committee reports.
School.
So school's back in, well, not back in session, but all the staff reported back, and they are getting geared up to have students come back. So that's where they are at right now. As you can imagine, that's caused a lot of questions from parents, and they're all doing their due diligence. And then, of course, everybody's seeing what's going on with the sports and MPA and that revolving story as it goes. So more to come, I'm sure.
Planning.
The planning board was scheduled to meet last week, and the applicant for a marijuana grow for medical purposes withdrew. At the time that I talked to the codes enforcement, we didn't know why it withdrew, but that brings up a question. It was mentioned to me, although the planning board meets again this month, there seems to be a lot of vagueness still maybe in our codes over where, because a retail establishment has a right to cultivate marijuana, but our ordinance doesn't say where they get to cultivate it, so it can be cultivated in a lot of different places, including downtown. So that's a planning board issue that may be addressed. What's not a planning board issue, I don't think, at this point is, they're also seeing a lot of pressure for, or more increased pressure for retail marijuana. And that's an issue that, when I discussed it with Alan, he logically said that it's, well, when the planning board comes to us with something, but with all due respect, the planning board did come at one point with something, and the council said, no, we don't want this, and it all stopped. So I think going forward, and if not tonight, maybe next week, we need a sense of the council, or the planning board will need a sense of the council and under what conditions we would entertain retail marijuana. Currently, the zoning doesn't allow it, but there's more involved in just the zoning. So it would involve the town too. The licensing requirements for medical, we have a separate ordinance for. So if it's to be considered at all, it should, yes, be taken up at the planning board, but also by the council. So that's that.
Recreational, you're talking, the recreational retail versus the idea of medical retail.
Right.
Yep.
Yes.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, Don, on the medical ordinance for fees and that type of whatnot, we could either modify that for recreational or go in a different direction with what we wanted to do. Plus, we need to do the land use chart
Right.
and update that for the recreational.
And I'm not that familiar with the retail ordinance. I have it, but I'm not an expert. So I'm not sure that the same ordinance could be tweaked. I think it may have to be added to
Right.
for retail.
Okay. That's what I missed. I thought it was where we left it last. We left it as retail is retail. When the state is prepared for recreational, we will re-update the land use chart to be able to incorporate that piece.
But if you do that without any kind of something to accompany it,
I don't
yes.
disagree. That's what I was losing sight of, is the other part, is that where that
it's
fits
I
in.
think it's this October 1st is when the first places are allowed to sell.
And I am not of the opinion that we actually go first.
No, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, definitely, there's a
Because
lot to be worked out.
There's kinks associated with that. We bought ourselves some time. We got a lot more bedfellows actually testing these things here that I feel comfortable actually when we have a process coming from the state that we can at least consider for where we want to land on it.
And the point I would make is that it can be a real simple answer.
Yeah.
No, if that's what the council wants. But if it's not a no, it's not a simple answer. So.
And I don't think it's a no, because every time this topic has come up, it's been 50-50 on either side of the topic. So I would really applaud the planning board's effort to be able to see where they land on it, to be able to weigh in and rely on their experience, because by any sense, when you started there and everybody on that board, there are a lot more in the weeds than we're ever going to be on this topic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't really want to be doing the heavy lifting to work against what the people that are more informed than us are on a topic like this.
May I, Chair? On that note, Diane, I seen that we got an email that the MMA is actually doing an afternoon segment on the new recreational, the laws and how it's going to affect the municipality. The question I had is, it's a midday workshop. If we are we planning to actually buy that, so at least we can have a couple people from staff? I mean, I guess one of the bigger questions I had is there any way that can be recorded so we could actually look at it at a later time?
I sent you an email this afternoon on that. Megan was doing the research on it, so I don't have all the.
She had mentioned she was in good. I wasn't sure if she had an opportunity.
She is, and I just looking right now. I'll read it to you. Oops, wrong one.
I mean, if the state's actually allowing some legal recommendations, or and they're actually they're very detailed, saying this isn't telling you how to actually police it or not. This is just giving you the information we have from the state. I think we actually at least, we're talking about the planning board moving forward. I think anybody that's actually going to be part of the town that's working towards how we do this, really at least ought to know what the state's standby is as far as legalities, you know what I mean, of how it's going to be played out. But
yeah. So actually what they're saying is they're in the process of posting webinar videos on their website to be purchased on demand. 5 are available now and 3 more expected to be added this week. I don't know if the marijuana one is going to be there. At this time, they're priced the same as if you're attending a live webinar.
35 for a town, 65 if you're not affiliated with MMA or something like that.
Right. And they have not been providing follow-up responses to questions after the webinars, and they don't expect they'll make this a common practice, especially with the recorded videos. So I think the answer is it is going to be recorded. So we can watch it at a later date.
I mean, I think it would be good for us to actually be able to do it and maybe actually have a joint section with the planning board and the council, maybe at an earlier workshop, and actually play it. So at least we all get the same information at the same time, because I think that's been one of the problems in the past, is the idea there's so much different information coming along that everybody
the other
takes
piece,
different.
when we went through, sorry, Sharon.
No.
The other piece that we used, there was a lot of free, if not legal advice that came out of this when the medicinal was actually tweaked. So if there's legal information to be able to compare where recreational differs, I would love to have that piece because I don't want to be working against that information as well. And I'm hopeful that MMA's got that summary in that presentation for sure.
Sounds like they're using outside sources to actually do the webinar. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's someone from internal. It's actually
Was it Bernstein that did the last one? I forget who it was. It was somebody.
Sure.
It was some lawyer firm that actually.
Yeah, probably.
It was in the
Bernstein
trades,
Sure, I think.
the townsman, and there was a pretty good recap associated with that at the time. I'm assuming there's going to be more of that too.
So if we could actually purchase it and actually maybe have a workshop prior to discussing and moving
Yeah,
forward at
good
all,
idea.
it wouldn't be a bad idea with the planning board and the council.
'Cause
We can do
I
it
think it's
safely.
a little bit much to ask the council and the planning board to, what do you want to do with this or
Yeah.
that without any kind of background?
Well, the other part too, the fact that I would leverage you, Don's liaison, is the fact that clear information of what the they're looking for from the council and delivering that to them. So coming back, it avoids the back and forth that I know you guys kind of got handed to you last time because we were consistently inconsistent in what we were actually projecting because it was like we would say one thing on one meeting and then it would be reversed the following meeting.
I'm
And
smiling
I
over
know
here.
you dealt with that. What was that?
I'm smiling under here.
It's not what I was reading in the eyes.
I just don't think everybody had the same consistent information either. I think
No, it was just true. Okay.
Well, we don't, if we're going to have experts, we need real experts that are not biased too, so,
yes,
anyway.
that's a whole separate animal. I'm feeling that one. That it for planning?
Yeah.
LDC.
Last LDC meeting was down at Moxie Plaza. We actually did a in between the raindrops tour of the Rumbo site. Last time I knew, and maybe Diane, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was like up to 65
Yeah,
people
I think so.
that
Yeah.
actually attended, even though the weather was actually far from being perfect.
Everybody stayed. It was a good
Everybody
Yeah, we
attendance.
did.
So I guess my point of being that there is a lot of interest in the Rumbo site, and if anybody that was there or didn't get a chance to voice their opinion, even if they did, there's still a survey online. I think you can get there from the town website, right, Diane?
I believe so.
And that's going to be, to almost the end of this month, I think. So you still have a few more weeks to go on, and it's actually a quick survey. It only takes about 5 minutes. There's a couple ranking of what you want to be there, gives your opinion. It's a good opportunity if you have a concern or if you have an idea what should be done or not be done down there to actually voice your concern. So actually Brett can compile all the information and try to get a good feedback from the community what people want down there. And believe you me, it's actually a very wide range of opportunities and opinions. So to try to narrow it down is going to be a challenge. But the more input, the better. And there was a lot of concern about the idea at that meeting about who actually gets a choice to actually determine what that is. And there was a comment made: is this a comment? This is a decision going to be made by 7 councilors. And I think the 7 councilors basically have a duty to represent the people that actually are given their opinion. So the more opinions we can get and the consensus of what people want, I think is what you're going to see happening. There was a question also that actually brought up, is this going to go to vote to what gets done? And I'm pretty sure, I'm not speaking for the council, but it's really going to be based on the opinions of what people want done, and basically I think the only time we'd go to the vote is if they were talking about a dollar value that actually meets the criteria that need to go to vote. But the overall idea of what will be done at the lot will hopefully be done through the process that Brett set forward through the survey, and if there is an opinion of what you want, make sure you go see your council that represents you or that you have an ear to and voice it forward so we can try to keep this moving forward. It's not going to be done overnight. This is going to be a long-term project. So we are going through the steps now to try to move that forward, and this survey is a very important part of it. So,
And that is on the town website. It's under economic development. So if you go to that and click that department, you'll find it.
good. Thank you.
One of the other key pieces from my takeaway was I thought once we get down to the site and people are doing the walk around, Randy being able to demonstrate to the community how much has actually been done for gratis or in turn for no cost. It's an impressive sight. If you haven't done the walk, do so. To see how just shy we are of the floodplain in the representation of all the fill that actually has come in that site, that's pretty cool, because it opened up and answered one of the concerns from one of the abutters with railroad, and the fact that the ability to be able to develop behind their property without actually playing with the sight lines that they are accustomed to now is a reality. And the fact is, talking at it from Moxie Plaza, everybody sees it as what they can see from the railroad diner out that back window, and the fact is the property still goes for another third beyond. So there's quite a bit of opportunity associated with that, and a lot of really cool efforts actually been put together for limited cost to this community at this point. Part of it, just the reclaim.
Yeah.
196 actually now sits in the Warumbo site, and it didn't cost us anything other than time to be able to make the connection with Randy. So, pretty cool. All right. Anything else, Alicia? Yeah, sorry.
All good. Thank you, sir.
Conservation, I have a report from Chair, Mr. Main. They met at Beaver Park on the 18th. They toured camping that a bunch of Girl Scout volunteers actually created there that are being used recently by Boy and Girl Scout troops within the park, which is always positive. They talked about harvesting plan and recommendation to hire New England forestry consultant for a detailed harvesting plan for a tune of $3,600. Then they got into specifics of invasive species, specifically Japanese knotweed on the walking trails, and the efforts that Mark's actually done to actually stem some of that back within the park. So that would be what I would offer for conservation. Recreation, sir.
Nothing new.
County, the commissioner's budget hearing is tomorrow night, 5:30, so I will have more after that, because the following Wednesday, I believe Mark and I are slated for starting the startup for this session. But at the next meeting, I will have at least their preliminary for where they stand on percentage increase and what the cost of the town is, because that'll be my number one question going into tomorrow night. Library, sir.
I have nothing new to report from the library. Everything's going smooth down there at the moment.
Okay. Water.
I think the Water Commission meets next week. It hasn't met since last month.
Town manager.
So we had a meeting on the Pine Woods Road recently, and right now they're planning on starting the paving on September 14th, which is good because the original schedule was into October that they would start. So they're starting ahead of schedule, which will be good to get that road paved. And I'm sure everybody in that area will love that. It's a long stretch of road, but they've done a really good job keeping it wet so that there's a minimum dust. But by doing that, it creates potholes too in the road. But they're doing a pretty good job. I've not received many complaints on that project. That's all I have.
Diane, I saw your email around 5:15 for town manager's report. Is there anything you want to share here? Or do you want to
Not
summarize that for later? Okay, perfect. Next item, Twyler, is
Counselor Communications, since we have no appointments.
Do you want to go?
Yeah.
I know you had one item.
I did, and I don't want to sound like a dominating the conversation here, but a couple of weeks ago, Fern hosted a meeting of the not the LDC, but a group that encompassed the LDC and some other members in his very comfortable but hot garage. And the presentation was done by Revision Energy, who by Mr. John Dunster, and I had escorted him all over the town about the previous hour, trying to show him, if the town were to do something with not only electric charging stations but solar somewhere, where those likely spots might be. And so he did a PowerPoint presentation and actually presented some of those options to us. And Diane was there, and so we looked at it, asked some few questions and things like that. But one of the things that I got out of it more than anything else, yes, electric charging stations at some point when we're developing Orumbo can fit in very nicely in one stage or another stage. I think it's level 2 or maybe even level 3 if we could somehow afford that. Level 3 is the fast charger like they have in Topsom. Level 2 takes a little longer and can be either free or not free. And level 1 is your garage plug-in for 110 volts. So, but at least level 2, and Revision Energy has some machines that we could become owners of at some point. So that's one aspect of it, and it may not necessarily want to be considered with the rest. The other part of that stuck out to me as we went around town, looked at various areas. One of the most probably productive places in town are the roofs of some of these buildings, and one of which is the town office, which has the very nice facing in the right direction. Diane asked the question, if solar was done on the roof, would it void the warranty? And from what we understand, it doesn't pierce the roof, so it would not. But so anyway, where I'm going with this is I think there's value. Economic development opportunities are there, and more than anything else, I think there's opportunity for the town to save some money. They have a thing called PPA agreements, where the town enters into an agreement for that. There are no upfront costs. In fact, the project is sold to an investor and is 100% financed by the investor. The town makes out by lower rates, and 5 years, I think it's 5 or 6 years down the road, gets an opportunity to buy the solar system and own it for nothing, own the operation of it for nothing. So I don't have all those facts really clear in my mind either, but I wanted to bring it up because I think that it's worth investigating further. There's a possibility, we obviously can't go out to one source and say this is what we want to do. So if we want to pursue the possibilities, that can be done through economic development, and we can go out there with some sort of an RFP or something to see what's possible in the town. We did it informally, but it needs to be done much more formally, and I believe, personally, I think there's money to be saved, if not tomorrow, in the long run. So that's what I believe.
May I add to that?
Please.
I think that Don actually hit on it. There was actually two purposes for that meeting. One was the idea of the forward thinking of anything that we do, whether it's actually the Rumbo or the Graziano Square. How do you get people to stop in? They predict within the next 5 to 10 years the higher percentage of electric vehicles will be on the road, which is it's happening. It's not if, it's happening. And a lot of these vehicles actually have GPS type equipment that actually tells them where the next charging station is. So the idea of planning ahead, thinking that people actually can look in there, the cars will tell them to stop in Lisbon Falls or Lisbon Center or Graziano Square for them to charge for an hour while they walk around and get a bite to eat and check out the scenic views is not really a bad thought process as far as for getting people to come to our community and participate in some of the restaurants and the vistas that we have. So I mean, it's very reasonable to think about. Some of it actually, as Don said, there's a lot to it. The idea of the equipment and how do you do it and do you charge for it and where do you get the upfront costs. And I think a lot of that's going to play out as we get going. So, I mean, I think that's a dialogue we need to keep for those sites without a doubt. The solar stuff, what I think would be really good, and he actually highlighted on that night, he's actually done a handful in the municipalities in the state of Maine. It'd be really good if he could actually kind of forward us some of that information and some of the logistics of the dollar values and the amount of power that they saved and where they were, because I think nothing's better than actually looking in another community and seeing what they did. And
actually, I think he's working with Westbrook right now, but I'm a little reluctant to go one direction when there may be others. I mean,
Yeah.
one vendor when there are others out there, so.
It's not so much a vendor, it's just more what, if one person is to be able to do this, another company probably could actually reproduce it. But just to actually see what municipalities are actually doing as far as for investing in it, I think is just nice to know. I mean, they are one of the bigger vendors in Maine right now, so
Yep. Oh, yeah.
they've actually done a handful or if not more municipalities and schools. So it'd be kind of nice to know it'd be nice to hear what the schools and municipalities said they gained and what they didn't gain from looking at it, that's all.
I have that PowerPoint. If you want, Alan, I'll forward it to the rest of the council.
Please.
It's not that inclusive. I mean,
Please.
it's got some mistakes in it, but it'll work.
At least it gives you the discussion. One of the things that I would actually add to that discussion is the topic of power. We mentioned the two tasks here with the charging stations. We mentioned the solar. There's also a Siemens performance part of this that actually can go in that direction. There's the third-party provider part that actually typically is taken care of through Maine Power Options because it's the easiest advantage through the state.
We've got multiple year
But
contracts out right now.
Yeah, probably I would bet it's 3 years right now because
Yep,
it was the
some
best
are
it's
even
there.
longer. The last one I think I did for 5 years. So I've got like 3 different contracts, and they're all multi-year contracts.
And what I would offer on that is I have personally talked to a dozen different energy providers that are operating within the state, and everybody has a varying approach to their recommendation. Communities that are doing this are either doing their RFPs to tailor on one task, or the one that we're trying to model in Lewiston is actually from an approach that copied from Portland and others, is the fact that, okay, come in, you make your pitch, and then which one is actually best received for what you think makes sense. And it could cover all of these 6 different tasks that we talked into this for consideration. The reason being is that, to your point, Don, is that that topic alone has got so many concepts for somebody to be able to grasp. The fact is, if you're the energy professional, you need to educate us why we need to go in this direction. That's what we need to grasp. We need to be able to know we hired the right guys to be able to take us in the direction we ultimately choose.
That's what's I was thinking is we need to get somebody to give us their pitch and the information that goes with us.
Yep.
And another, if I just may add one more thing, and another avenue that we never even tapped into that we were talking to him briefly about before is if you say you actually had this building and you actually had all the correct facing locations solar paneled. Right now, this company and most companies now are actually accessing what they call a Tesla battery, which actually the solar charges primarily and then actually sells it off. Yep. So it's very possible that, like in the power outage we had the other day, that power goes out, batteries kick on seamlessly, and for like 12 to 24 hours you run all the same grid without having no backup generator, no power maintenance, no nothing. It's actually just a switch, automatic switch, which is pretty impressive if you think about it.
For sure.
Yeah, technology's coming a long way, so the idea of backup generators at some point in time with some of these setups are just really going to be obsolete because, for long term it will be, but most of our power outages in town are usually from 8 to 10 hours, maybe sometimes 12, but you don't really see them for weeks on end. But
solar can be spun in 6 different directions. I'm sure you heard that through them. Do we own the hardware? Do we actually privatize? Do we do net metering? Do we actually sell it off?
That's the PPA idea. If for example, if you put solar on this building, on MTM, on LES, on whatever else, the high school, something else, all of that becomes one contract and done by an investor. So that's one approach that can be done that way.
And we could sell a land lease for the old transfer station or landfill station. We could approach it a variety of different ways. Each task can be its own. And point I make there is a lot of legwork. Need to be able to have somebody come in, make that approach, figure out which one is best, because I've talked to 12 different firms in the last year, and they all take a slightly different view associated with that. So
You said you could get me some information on.
yeah, and then a lot of that, like I said, Portland's the one I think I sent. I'll put my hands on that. I'll shoot that for you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the fact that I know we're working on one, but each community's got its own little take in that regard. So something that works for Lisbon. Anybody else with council communications? I have one. Diane has given us all the date that she's confirmed for the employee picnic, September 20th. Beaver Park is the choice associated with that amongst staff, given more opportunity at the venue. My question would be the same as last year, is whose availability to make sure that we can cover that from our commitment, or being one of our goals, the council representation. That said, I preface that, and I will tell you that's my wife's birthday. So
I think that happened last year.
Does she like hamburgers?
To
I'm
the
going to
date.
stay away from it next year.
Please.
Does she like
You can invite her,
hamburgers?
she can come along, we'll give her a cake.
She loves Very Merry Main Street, and she hangs out with the firefighters, so she's not opposed to it, but I just don't know what she has planned for that day.
It's her birthday. You're
Yeah,
supposed
you're
to plan
supposed
it.
to plan the day for her.
Probably
It
not.
really doesn't quite work that way. She subscribes to the birthday week, if not month, so September 1st, so yeah, I got to start stepping up my game. So I appreciate your interest there, Don, but I'm already drowning. So
So I plan to show up.
I heard Don. Anybody else?
I'll be
I know
there.
the date said you worked. You actually, as long as we had a couple of representatives, we had 3 last year that were able
I'll
to
be there.
make it. That would be very helpful.
I'll be there.
Thank you. Any other items for council communications?
I'm just curious, they chose Beaver Park versus downtown? Okay.
They really they enjoyed themselves out there. And
No, it's great time. I'm just curious.
Yep.
Next item, Twila.
Audience participation and response for new items. At this time, those in the audience who wish to speak may enter the room. I see there is none. Those listening from Town Hall Live video streaming are now invited to send written comments to award@lisbonme.
I still got nothing, Twila, so we're going to move right along.
All right. We have an executive session, Order 2020-161, to go into executive session for 1 MRSA, Section 40568, personnel matters.
I make a motion.
Need a second for that? And my understanding, we will not be coming back, so there's nothing that we need to vote on tonight, right?
No, I'm hoping you will vote on something tonight.
Oh,
Then we
so-
will be coming back, so I reversed what I said. I misinformed. All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0. And adjourned.
Thank you.
So finish up and you can turn it back on.
Yep. We do have stuff over there on the table, too, that needs to be signed before
Yes.
you leave tonight.
Do you want me to turn the microphones off at once?
Yes,
And
do
then turn
that.
it back on?
Turn it back
Leave
on.
this, and then
Yep.
turn it back on. Okay.
I had a very hot mic tonight. Hot mic.
Is that good or bad?
Listening, not always paying attention, though.
We're in business.
Welcome back to the viewing public at home. We have a motion on the table.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to promote Lieutenant Ryan McGee as acting chief,
Confirm.
effective immediately.
Actually, 9/11.
No, September 11th, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I need a second.
Second.
All in favor? For the backstory, if anybody missed the article, the fact that that is the last day of our current police chief, Mark Hagan, who has accepted the position of police chief in Topsom.
Did you second that, Don?
No, it was Mark.
Mark, thank you. Sorry about that.
Need a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Thank you all. Have a
Good
great
night.
Have fun, everybody.
Sir, good night.
We never came out of executive session.
Yeah, we did.
We did?
I said welcome back.
Yeah.